Hello, and welcome to Temple of the False Pod, where our decks are not optimized, but our plays sure as heck are fun. I'm Andy.
I'm Bruce.
Bruce, you're making a mess. But
I
hey,
am.
it's your own table, so that's your prerogative. Today we've got your mine, yours, our listeners. It's our 69th episode. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Before we get into it, we're going to talk a lot about food today.
What?
If that's a topic you don't really want to listen to us talk about for 45 minutes, maybe skip this one. We'll be back next week with something cool, so stick around for that. But if you want to... Yeah?
That's what I get. I'm choking on a chip.
Yeah, well... But we got some nice, cool Coca-Colas here. Not a sponsor. And Bruce got some Humpty Dumpty all-dressed chips for the Canadian in you. I love all-dressed chips. It's probably the second best thing to come from Canada, behind Bare Naked Ladies. And before
what?
Bare Naked Ladies,
Canadian maple donuts.
Jim Carrey,
Hockey.
Justin Bieber.
Bite your tongue.
How far are we going to get down this list before we say Bruce? Commander Cookout.
We still got a ways to go. The A-Team.
Like the show?
Oh, Andy, you are so young.
Is
the
this
original Canadian Magic podcast.
Oh, I am young. What else is Canadian? What do we got? There's too many things that's Canadian.
Boros.
Yeah, all-dressed chips are definitely up there, though. They're pretty good. I'm not going to explain them because it brings the joy out of it.
My explanation for all-dressed chips, and it always has been, is after they're finished making all of the other kinds of chips, they go around and they sweep up all the extra powder and shit that's all over the floor of the factory, pour all of that into one machine, and then they spit that stuff all over one chip.
Yeah.
All dressed.
We got what? Barbecue, we got ketchup, we got salt and vinegar.
Yeah.
Sour cream and onion?
Maybe.
There we go.
Could be dill pickle. But it's all dressed. So.
It's good. It's
delicious.
It's sour. It's salty. It's addictive.
Yep.
And it's dusty as hell.
All right, so we're talking about food.
Yeah, we're talking about food today. We feel that food is enough of a magic adjacent topic that it deserves a 45-minute episode, and we're going to give it to you.
At least. I think the first and the most obvious part of the food discussion when it comes to Magic. So what are you eating during your evening of playing Magic? And I think the most obvious part and the thing that I think most everybody is aware of
Islands.
Is the grease factor.
Oh, yeah.
You want to be careful with nobody wants oily fingers. The issue with the oily fingers obviously is your cards. Now, I mean, yes, they're sleeved, but you really don't want greasy
smudges.
Sleeves all on your cards. It makes either your cards stick together, it's just messy. You don't want it, and honestly, nobody else wants it either, because nobody wants you to reach across the table to grab their card to see what it says if they know that you've had your fingers in an oil slick for the last few minutes, scarfing down whatever food it was that you brought or is available at the table. So to me, just about every food that I consider as, something that I'm going to bring for Magic is something that I try and avoid it being greasy. Now, having said that, we have pizza in just about every one of our Magic nights. But I do try... I have tried to choose pizzas that are generally less greasy. A lot of them have, most of the pizzas that I get have a dry crust. So you can at least hold the pizza, from the bottom without getting your fingers all oily. Now, I mean, hey, it's pizza. The top of the pizza is loaded with cheese, and if I like it, it's loaded with pepperoni as well. So it's got an oily top to it, but thankfully, you should be able to manage to get through it without getting your fingers in too much of a mess.
Yeah, and I mean, most places you go where you play Magic, whether it's an LGS or your local convention or whatever. Like, the food that you're going to find there is all relatively finger food.
Yeah.
You don't want to have to deal with silverware or plasticware, and it's just easier that way. So you're going to be using your hands a lot, which, I mean, generally speaking, if I'm in a public place, I'm going to be carrying around a bottle of sanitizer anyway, or some extra napkins or whatever. Yeah. So, like, we've got pizza, got chips. Ooh. Breeze just blew in, and it smells like a grill. You got ribs.
Speaking of food.
But, I mean, yeah, it's tough because, you know how you can handle your own cards, but, maybe somebody doesn't want you touching their stuff.
Right.
With your grubby little fingers. Or big fingers. I don't know.
Right.
Fingers come in all sizes.
Now, so Andy, you brought up chips. Chips, popcorn, all this, very much the snack food.
Yeah.
Up until about, say, 2.5 years ago?
2020-ish. Early 2020, actually.
Early 2020.
I think we could almost...
You could just take a bowl. You could just take a bag of potato chips, pour it into a bowl, set it in the middle of your magic table, and it was just sort of a snack that you had for everybody. Folks, you might want to start considering breaking that down a little bit. COVID is real, and it's just,
Yeah.
And I appreciate this is not really the way COVID is spread. However, there are plenty of germs out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's
something that we all need to be a little more aware of.
Yeah. I mean, if you're literally putting your hands up to your mouth and then putting it back in a thing, then, like, you just be aware of what you're doing. And, like, I wanted to bring something to Magic one night, or I don't. It might have been BrewCon or something, but I it's not that I was terribly worried, but my wife was like, "Oh, like, to be more considerate, you can grab one of those boxes from the grocery store that's got like 24 individual size bags." It's not the best for the environment, but, like, for people who are a little bit, or even a little bit concerned, it's a sense of solace.
Right.
But
one of the benefits of playing Magic in a house, I know that for us, when friends bring a bag of chips or a bag of popcorn or something along that line, we spread it out. So we get 2 or 3 bowls on the table, and if there's only 4 or 5 of you playing, it reduces the communal part of the communal bowl, the communal part of the communal bowl of chips. So
or even, I mean, if it's after we've had pizza or something, I usually keep my plate around and just pour some into that.
Yeah,
keep your own little stash. And I know that this topic may not be as relevant currently, because I know a lot of LGSs. I know my LGS is currently has a not ban on food. They might have a ban on food. It feels like a strong word, but I think that they don't allow you to eat food at the table because, I mean, you have to have your mask on. I think they only allow you to drink liquids, and even then it's, restrictive.
Right.
But it's just these little things that you kind of have to be aware of, I guess. I mean, we've been doing this for 2.5 years, and it's still, we don't have to lecture you about it.
Yeah, it's still very easy to fall into old patterns.
Oh yeah,
but it's just,
especially when
something
you're not
to keep in
about
mind.
It. Yeah.
One of the other, let's see. So, beyond the typical, beyond the pizza and the popcorn and the chips and that kind of thing, what other options make for good Magic food? It's amazing how well a good bowl of chili works for Magic.
Thought you were gonna say Cheerios.
No, Chili is relatively easy to make. It's a single bowl, so there's a limiting factor on the mess.
You can use the beans as tokens.
I wouldn't recommend doing that, but yes, you could. But it's
hearty.
It's hearty and it's clean because you pour. You take your portion to put it in a bowl, and you're not getting any grease on your fingers. And the bowl can be set in a safe place where it's not likely to get tipped. And honestly, a good chili isn't likely to spill out even if you bump it. Because as long as it lands back straight, then a wobble is not going to see chili spill out all over the table like water.
I think the hardiness for me is really the excellent part of chili, because I think
love a good chili.
Oh yeah, I think it gives you, and this kind of goes with any of this type of food, or the magnitude of this food, I guess, where just stopping to have a meal.
Yeah.
Whether it's between games or everybody's like, all right, like, I need a break to eat. It's always good to just, like, especially if you're doing like any sort of long form or like a convention or something, like taking time to eat is underrated. Because of course you just want to keep playing Magic, but if you continue to do that when you're hungry, like, you're gonna make bad decisions. You're gonna get hangry, if you will. And just even taking the time to just breathe and calm yourself if you're any sort of like stressed or tense or any feel bads from any previous games, it gives you time to reset. And I think chili is like an excellent, just like warm your heart kind of meal.
Right. Yeah, and I some of the best times I've had at conventions invariably involve a meal. And then a game of Magic either before or after the meal. So, or
definitely.
Both.
And I think like chili, lasagna. I know that Yolanda has made us lasagna on occasion, and it's just like, it's so good. It's just like such a, like, all right, get right back into it,
Yeah.
It's very much, it's both, taking the time to reset, but also just like getting your body to pay attention to itself.
Right, and the nice part about chili or lasagna is they can sit. And it doesn't involve you making a big meal and then immediately putting it on the table.
Right.
So if you're in the middle of a game of Magic, it's fine. Your chili is just sitting there bubbling on the stove, and your lasagna is just sitting there warming in the oven. If it sits there for another 20 minutes, there's really not going to be that much change in either of those.
Yeah.
So there's a real benefit to meals where it's essentially prepared ahead of time.
Definitely. And especially if you have multiple pods going, you don't all have to eat at the same time.
Yeah.
Because it will still be warm, inevitably.
By the way, and props goes out to Josh. Josh, I don't know if you're listening, but still some of the best chili going. So, one more option.
Yeah.
And I particularly like this option because this is something that you can either throw in the slow cooker and let it percolate all day, or you can throw it on the stovetop and have it ready to go fast. Just plain meatballs and sauce.
Oh my God.
Meatballs and sauce, and if you've got
rolls
a few finger rolls, you are set. And that is, and it's great. It's filling. The joy of all of these ones that I've described is once you've finished your turn, you can get up, go get, throw a couple of meatballs into your finger roll, little extra sauce, little cheese, sit back down at the table with your plate of stuff. You can easily scarf down 2 of those finger rolls. well before it comes back to your turn. You've seen everything that's going on. And when it's your turn, all you've really touched is the bread from the finger roll. So you're good. And I mean, and honestly, even if you do get a little sauce, well, if you've had enough, if you've got somebody who has had enough forethought to set up the meatballs and the sauce, then there's got to be a napkin. There's got to be napkins floating around somewhere.
Oh, absolutely.
So
it's got to be.
It's a meal that you can essentially snack on.
A meal, no.
While you're literally waiting for your turn to come back. And as far as the popcorn and the chips and those sort of snacks on the table, this one involves a whole lot more work, but
it's much more satisfying.
It's a veggie plate is surprisingly good and very popular. Especially if you can set up the dip so that everybody can have a little bit of their own dip. And that way they're not dipping on the middle of the table and then dragging it back over all their cards before it gets into their mouth. It works out really well, and and it's a healthy alternative that isn't making everybody
And the pre-made ones too are like surprisingly cost effective.
Yeah. As a fan of Costco, I have done this many times from Costco, and it's delicious.
And I think with any food that you're eating, I think a napkin's always a good idea, just to wipe your hands on. I mean, you can wipe them on your pants. I don't give a shit.
If you're hosting and you're providing any kind of food, where's your napkins? I mean, we are talking about magic cards, and even the cleanest food eventually gets on somebody's fingers somehow. It just does. You have to assume that that's going to be the case.
And you don't want them licking your fingers.
You don't want anybody licking their fingers and then pawing your cards.
Of course I do, but
your own cards are one thing, but you're going to reach across to touch somebody else's cards. It's just going to happen. So
let's throw it to break real quick, and when we come back, we're going to talk more about food and our beautiful lives around magic, and I don't know. I honestly don't know what we have in store for you, so we're going to be right back. This episode of Temple of False Pod is brought to you by...
Hey, it's me, Guillaume. I got some food for you. It really makes you indestructible.
This episode of Temple of the False Pod is brought to you by Asmoranomardic. This episode of Temple of the False Pod is brought to you by Asmoranomardic. Yeah. This episode of Temple of the False Pod is brought to you by the Wizard Chef with a really long name that I'm not going to try and pronounce.
She's human? Why did I think she was a giant?
No, human wizard who cooks with exotic animals. Scorpions and...
Hey, we're back!
Hey!
Oh, and now back to you. Hey, we're back!
All right, so we talked a little bit about the grease factor in the first half. So
Grease fang?
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been a good one.
I want to talk about the powder factor.
Oh, yeah. Getting our snowboard.
The difference to me with the powder factor is there is an undeniable urge to lick your fingers if you've got powder on it, because, of course, the powder I'm talking donut.
Oh, I was thinking like Doritos.
Good option. Another good option. But yeah, I know very few people who are interested in using the napkin in those situations. There's a finger licking clean and then maybe the napkin. Maybe at that point.
Same with the ribs.
Same with the ribs. Ribs we're not really talking ribs. Powder.
No, we were never actually talking ribs.
So, but it's something else to keep in mind when you're looking at snack options.
I think too with the powder factor.
Yeah.
it drips. It falls much more availably than, say, your grease factory.
Yeah, and I think it also falls a lot more than people realize. There's nothing quite like watching somebody who bites a piece of Dorito. Like, why aren't you shoving that whole thing in your mouth? They're bite size.
Bruce, you're making me uncomfortable.
Just put the whole Dorito in your mouth and chew. Or somebody with a powdered donut. The space in front of them is always a mess. And why anybody would think that somehow eating something that involves powder is not going to end up on your cards in some way is just foolhardy.
Yeah.
I mean, if you must go this route,
Use a plate.
remember a plate. Yeah, just
remember
a plate.
Maybe bring hand sanitizer. Just kind of sop up your fingers. If you do end up licking your fingers, just squirt, squirt. All right, your hands are cleaner. Or get up and wash your hands.
Right.
There have been plenty of times that I'm like, I should have just brought a bottle of hand sanitizer.
Right.
I've got one literally in my car. Just bring it in with you.
Right.
Nobody's going to look at you weird for it, especially after you lick your fingers.
No.
They're going to look at you weird after you lick your fingers. But then you're going to be like, I've got a trick up my sleeve. It's a bottle of hand sanitizer. And they're going to be like, hey! And then people will applaud and you get a standing ovation. They don't even realize that you are the threat on the table anymore.
Right.
Because they're just so enthralled with your brilliant use of food and magic.
Right. The other part,
Right.
the other part that I wanted, or another part that I wanted to discuss, is the dessert. Because I'm not a small guy. I love a good dessert. If you are showing up to a friend's house to play some Magic, you certainly can't go wrong by bringing dessert.
Everybody loves you for it.
Our friend Harry regularly brings dessert on our Thursday nights. And
He gets to try out his baking on us. It's great.
yes, he gets to try out his baking. And I mean, whether it's good or bad, it's always good. Because, hey, we're getting dessert out of the deal. I will say, Harry doesn't follow any of the rules as far as what would be appropriate while playing Magic, because Harry understands that we have utensils here, so he's going to slice it up. He's going to put if it requires slicing and we put on a plate, he will do that, and then we'll be using forks, and we literally pause the game for a couple of minutes while we enjoy dessert, whether it's a slice of cake or a piece of fudge or whatever other dessert or stuff that doesn't require plating, like a cookie or whatever else he's bringing along. I think the key for just about any dessert is take the pause. Take the pause. With the exception of a plate of cookies or something that's where you're taking multiple pieces. Just stop for just a second, because so many of the desserts are crumbly or flaky or something that's going to make a mess of your cards. And it can't hurt to stop for just a couple of minutes.
And I guess this is more of a general point, but if you brought something in homemade and somebody doesn't want a piece of it or whatever, it doesn't mean that they hate you.
And I will say, Harry has asked in the past if anybody has any sort of dietary restrictions. Because,
that's something big to be aware of.
Right, because with our group, we have someone who's vegetarian, but so obviously he's not looking to, provide some sort of meat-loaded dessert. However, he also includes peanut butter in a lot of his desserts, but no one in our group is allergic, so we're in good shape there.
Right. I've previously had roommates who've been allergic to peanut butter, and just knowing how easily transmissible these particles of peanuts are.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not enough to just have them not eat it. Because, like, if somebody
Right.
else eats
So
it...
you're
then-
looking to take a pass
say,
or
yeah,
go to the bathroom and literally wash your face after you've eaten it.
Right. But, I mean, even more than that, like, you know, I eat something that's got peanuts in it, and then I touch somebody who's allergic to cards.
Sure.
All right, well, now it's on there. Like,
Yeah,
it's just...
congratulations.
Yeah.
Hope
but,
they brought the EpiPen.
I mean, if they didn't, then... But we're getting a little preachy on this. Food, man. Desserts. I'm trying to think of what meaty dessert he could even make. I was going to say mincemeat pie, but that's not even meat. A nice frozen hot dog dipped in chocolate.
There's got to be some kind of a dessert with bacon on it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Ideally, yes.
To each their own.
Look, I have something called the 2-meat rule. I know I'm cruising way off of magic here, but
Bruce loves a good 2 meats.
The 2-meat rule. If you can have any meal can be good, and that includes meals without meat, meals with meat. But for a truly great meal, like one of the all-timers, there has to be 2 meat. There has to be 2 kinds of meat.
Surf and turf.
Surf and turf, yes. Bacon and steak.
Chicken and waffles.
Chicken and waffles, but you're gonna have you need a side of sausage
Meat
or bacon.
Waffles.
Maybe.
I'm just naming meat things.
The most obvious one that I can think of is the best cheeseburger is always going to be a bacon cheeseburger. There is no way you're going to make a cheeseburger that's the best. That is a truly great burger if it doesn't have bacon on it. It has to. It's a requirement. There is no arguing this. It cannot be amongst the greats without bacon on it. Unless, of course, it's a slice of ham. 2-meat rule is still in effect here.
That's why they call it a hamburger, you know. Because it needs that piece of ham.
I don't think that's why they call it a hamburger. But anyways, that's the 2-meat rule. So, screaming right back onto topic.
I'm more of a sausage kind of guy anyway.
So, to go in a slightly different direction, I want to talk about the wall of food. During our games, quite often, someone brings Josh will regularly bring a bag of popcorn. And then somebody brings a box of Cheetos, say, or a box of some
Cheez-Its,
kind of snack, Cheez-Its or whatever.
Yeah.
And then there's a dessert. And then there's,
Everyone's
and then
deck
everybody
boxes
has a drink.
Tokens.
Right. So this stuff starts to clutter the table. And when it's food, we tend to put it in the middle of the table because we're sharing.
Yeah.
So if it, as I said, not necessarily a communal bowl, because maybe we've got 2 or 3 bowls out there, but there's food on the table. And a lot of times this food will end up in front of somebody's playmat. And this is where we get the wall of food. So you get that box of Cheez-Its sitting in front of somebody's playmat, and right next to it is their drink. And right next to it is a plate that's got a pizza on it or something. And it obstructs at least part of the playmat and hides some of the cards. Please keep in mind that others are trying to see your playmat. And no one should have to ask you to move stuff so that they can see what's on your board. And that happens with us regularly.
And I don't think anybody's doing it intentionally. I think that, it happens and nobody really realizes how much is being obstructed at any given time.
Well, and I mean, if if the only part of your table that's being obstructed is literally your library,
right,
and the graveyard right next to it,
right.
Well, only some people are going to care about what's in your graveyard,
which they're going to ask you for anyway.
Right, but sometimes they'd rather not ask. They just want to see. It's like, oh, I see he's got only 3 cards in his graveyard.
Yeah,
we're fine for now. But if he can't see it because there's a box with food in front of it, let's we need to keep that in mind. Let's keep the table obstruction free.
Yeah,
as much as possible. So.
And I think too, along those same lines, like you were saying drinks and stuff, like all the more reason to bring a water bottle or whatever. I mean, at work I have to have a sealable drink vessel to drink out of,
right?
Because I work with some things that cannot be replaced, so you don't want to accidentally spill,
right?
I also, in addition to that, keep it under my desk so that if it accidentally somehow opens and spills, it's gonna be on the floor, whatever.
Right.
I like to use the same considerations and rules for myself when playing Magic. Keep your water bottle by your feet. If you're not swinging your feet or whatever, keep it.
Yeah.
Maybe below the play surface. It'll be less in the way, obstructing the play mat, and you'll be less likely to knock it over anyway.
Right.
That said, sometimes it's obviously hard if you have like an open can or an open glass or whatever.
Right.
But all the more reason to just like put it off somewhere else.
I've seen a number of times, especially at conventions, where someone has, they've purchased their beverage, and they're in the act, they're drinking it, and then they put it down on the table. It's still open, and it's what I like to say, it's within flailing range. It is so rare when a spilled bottle of fluid actually hits when you bump a bottle or a glass or whatever, that it then hits your cards.
Yeah, what is it? Yeah.
Because it's always, your hands always seem to be going away from you, which means you're knocking over something into somebody else's stuff.
Yeah, you got pivot points called elbows that keep your hands away from your body.
Right. So when you've got beverages on the table, please be careful. Please be careful. We are talking about
expensive pieces of cardboard.
I know we keep them sleeved for a reason, but you should not be relying on whether somebody is sleeving their cards.
And you shouldn't be relying that they double sleeve them either. I mean, I've seen it happen where people have accidentally spilled on cards, regardless of if they're sleeved or not. It's the stress that you don't need to deal with.
Right, and it's very easy to avoid it. Just put your drinks in a place where you're not going to spill, where you're not going to be spilling them, where you're not going to bump them, or in a place where somebody else isn't going to bump them either.
Yeah, think about how often you bump your life total dice. Like, now, what if that was a drink?
Yeah,
it's a bit of a more expensive mistake, potentially. So,
yes,
drinks, man. Stay hydrated, but be smart about it.
Right. Something else that is primarily actually just sort of for me and for those who are who find themselves hosting on a regular basis. A mini fridge in the same room where you're hosting is freaking awesome.
Oh yeah,
it is.
People come in, they pack
level.
It up, and then
most of the time for my group, people who are interested in having a drink during the game, they're bringing over their booze, and so you march in, load up the fridge, and it's just right there. So you barely even need to get up during the course of the game. Somebody is usually within arm's length of the fridge, and it's it's just a super handy thing to have. I will say I'm rarely the one sitting next to the fridge, which works well for me because then I get to ask other people to grab my drink for me because they're the ones who are sitting in the seat closer to the fridge. But that was their mistake, not mine. I didn't want to get too deep into the idea of food, and of course we barely ever even mentioned food tokens.
Oh yeah,
just to I mean, the focus was on actual food as opposed to food tokens. But
Man, I love what they've done with food tokens. I mean, more than blood tokens.
yeah,
Just how, I mean, I've brought this up a number of times, but like the amount that they've gone from the initial design of the actual token, where, you know, some cards you can sack it for a different effect, or you know, the fact that they're artifacts, these are all great things.
right. The difficulty with food tokens is that they suffer by comparison. Because you look at a food token and it's not a treasure token. It's not a clue token. So it's not getting you mana or cards, it's just gaining you life.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say they're probably better than clue tokens, but I don't know about that, because they're the same cost. They're 2 mana to sack. One draws you a card, the other gets you 3 life. So
you'll take the card draw every time.
Yeah.
Well, except for the time when you're about to die and need the 3 life.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, even with card draw, like, you know, when was the last time you used a clue?
The last time I had one.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah. I don't tend to create a lot of clues, just because I've found there are better ways to draw cards than to spend 2 mana. But if I want to gain life, there are better ways to do it than food.
That's true.
So, than food tokens. But
yeah, like healing self. It's just 1 mana instead of 2.
It's painful, Andy. Painful. What are you doing? You're killing me here. All right, folks.
That's going to do it for our food episode. But next week we've got our season finale. And it's the beginning of July next week. I guess probably... Let's see. Let me look at my calendar. Yep, in 2 days is the beginning of July. So that's exciting, which means our season finale kind of lines up with the patriotic holiday of Canada Day. You know, we could go
throwing the curveball in here.
Yeah, we could go the obvious route of making it all, you know, American USA to the nines. But figure, you know, let's honor our all dressed chips here. Our bare naked ladies are Justin Bieber, our Bruce Richard, our
neighbors to the north.
Our A team. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Bruce is rolling his eyes.
Yeah.
So we're gonna make them Canada themed. That said, we just had a beautiful new release of Commander Legends 2, Battle for Baldur's Gate. So we decided we're going to do the choose a background thing. So we're going to have red and white, as is the Canadian flag. So red and white, choose a commander, choose a background to commander. So you have a commander and a background as your commanders. And then we build the deck from there. Yep. Do you have any other restrictions that you want to impose?
No, I think that's going to be good enough. We're going Boros. We're going to be
it's going to be Boros
with a background.
Yeah, I have some ideas already, and I'm very excited.
I have no idea right now.
If you're out there listening and you want to build us a Canadian commander deck, but not Canadian Highlander, a Canadian commander deck, feel free to shoot us the list. We'll throw it up on Twitter as well.
Sure.
I'm very excited because we're reaching the end of our 7th season. Episode 70 coming up next week. We'll have 2 weeks off of our main series, and we'll be back after that. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Thank you so much for listening to our food episode. Like Weird Al, he had a food album.
Just about.
I think the
man's entire career was food.
I think that was one of my first CDs, compact discs. I don't know if you remember those.
Yeah.
I think that was one of my first CDs. It was Weird Al's food album. Explains a lot. Anyway, thank you for listening. Share with your friends. Do what you do to podcasts, but do it with this one too. We're Temple of Falsepod, where our decks are not optimized, but our plays sure as heck are fun. I'm Andy.
I am the True North, strong and free. Also known as Bruce.
Is that a Canadian thing?
It's part of the anthem, dude.
No, I don't know. We're gonna go play some Magic. We'll see you next week. Thank you again for listening, and may your 5th land be the Temple.
Bye!
Wait, before you go, I just wanted to say thank you for listening. You can reach out to us via email at falsepodmtg@gmail.com or on Twitter @falsepodmtg. Bruce is @manaburned, and I'm @AndyWeekend, though you'll definitely notice I use the podcast Twitter far more often. Now that we've got you here, make sure you subscribe, like, rate us on whatever podcast platform you use. It helps us out. It gets us more reach. Subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. Like a video there. Leave some comments for more casual enjoyment. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back with some more timeless discussions about all things casual. So come hang out, and may your 5th land be the Temple. Bye-bye. Should I do my best, Bruce? Bye!